me where the bathroom? Okay. Well, I'll bury you the best I can. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Fine. You know what? If you're gonna be that way, then you can just go back to work. There you go. There's another store. I just came from the store. No. Bad. Oh, what did I get? The push and pull of strategy and horror, right? Because it's very difficult to have that kind of balancing act. Strategy is about empowering. It's about giving you a puzzle that you can get an answer for, and then you solve the riddle, so to speak, and then you feel smart. Like, you feel good. Horror is about disempowerment. Not that horror can't have moments of empowerment. In fact, I am very much in the mentality of it needs... Horror in particular needs good juxtaposition to be good. So it needs humor. It needs brevity, right? Because if it doesn't, the horror aspect gets you acclimate. Oh. Oh! They wanted that door closed. Alright. It's like, get out! Alright, we're just gonna go to lifeboats then. I mean, to be fair, it would be the one place you would want to go, but also that's the one place that everyone would go. So, oh boy.
How am I going to get down there?
Simple, we're gonna walk like this, and then I'm gonna hold the left trigger to hold. I can't. Are you sure? I Hello, everybody. How y'all doing today? Hopefully well. Got myself some my water. Just finished some lunch. And it'd be Friday, so I don't work out on Fridays. So I'm just vibing. I'm feeling better today. I want to give game dev another shot. We'll see how long we get at it. I think it depends how many roadblocks we get when we're trying to figure things out. But it's been a hot minute, so we're going to kind of need a bit of a refresher as far as what we're doing. I believe the last time we did game dev, we were exploring CAD systems. Specifically, it's like the emergency responses. Let's see here. I believe I still have it up. If we look, oh, nope, there it is. And we were going computer-aided dispatch. So essentially that's what we're doing, right? We were making a we were making a CAD system without knowing what a CAD system was. So we were just kind of looking up, being like, okay, well, what is it that emergency responders are currently using? And what we would want, because we were basing this game in a time where this is kind of just getting started, in a way.
I wouldn't say like right when it was invented, but very much of like it was trying to be implemented and there was still a lot of bugs. So there's still a lot of systems in place that would not have been streamlined, I guess is a good way of putting it. Like it's still very much rough around the edges. Actually, when was CAD? It would be here, right? When was it implemented? Because I was thinking like early 2000s when the time span for this. Think brick, white computers, but not hyper slow internet. I am not seeing when CAD was implemented. Let's see. When was CAD invented? 1957. Yeah, not that far back. Definitely not that. Ooh. 1950s, 1960s. We're looking more towards like the 90s. In the late 90s. These developments were inspired the work of Ian Braid, subsequently led to the release of mid-range packages. I don't understand any of this. We're not going to focus too hard on this, just because last time I fried my brain. Availability of free and open source CADware, high cost of advanced 3D CADware, restrained growth in the 2000s. Gotcha. Not exactly what I wanted, but it's good. Anyway, so we were just kind of taking a look and see, like, because we were originally going to do like a point and click where it was just, oh, you click on this house and you send it to, but we really should figure out how we want the player to interact with the call. So I think breaking that down and coming to an agreement with that is our next step, and then coding for that. Because even as of right now, I'm still not 100% on what the best path forward will be. So we can open up our Excel here. So this is what we were taking notes last time with CAD. And as far as the kind of interaction, we click on the house, select from a menu. We had multiple different colors from the different resources. We were considering having a two-way radio, so you get to hear what happened as far as the results of it. Originally, I was planning on having it so that you kind of like stick to one until it's complete. And then you would have the text that would show up, and then you would have the reaction from looking at the computer screen versus through audio specific in a radio. It kind of adding to a visual aspect of you seeing them travel on the map. Kind of like, here, I'll show you. If, let's see here. We'll do slight display. I'll try to remember to turn on and off the display capture, but that's really the only way to pull this up without any kind of like issues. So this is where we have all these guys moving. The red is just a debug that I implemented so that I could see what it's able to see, you know? Here, I also need to, actually that's not terrible. I need to make this also extend. But if you click, they move, right? Which is great. Eventually they stop reading it. I don't know why or when. I imagine they get stuck on the geometry of it or something. But it's kind of like, oh, okay, we get a call. And then we need to go to this house. See, it just randomly didn't move. So as this is moving forward, I think this is still a little too fast. You see them go, and then when they stop here, then text would appear on the screen. That would be like them responding back, going like, the house's door has been busted open, or the like the windows are broken, or everything seems fine, like weirdly fine. And then you hear like them being attacked, or they kind of attacking the imposter, and the results of your actions, right? Because we want to create a connection between the resources and the player. The player should value the resources of these emergency personnel, right? They should see these AI essentially as people, that they genuinely care about their well-being and they don't want them to die, because that would help reinforce trying to last as long as possible and not just sacrificing pawns for the greater good, right? Because the biggest difference between a chessboard and what we're going on right now, or actually probably a significant portion of strategy games, is that there is not a win condition here. This is a strategy horror. There is a last as long as you can, not a try to beat against insurmountable odds. So that was what I was thinking originally. But we ended up learning about two-way radios. I mean, we already knew about two-way radios before, but as far as applying it here, and that's how a lot of emergency centers contact the appropriate people, is through a two-way radio. So it's a little bit more passive. So I was considering, it's like, oh, okay, you move here. It's not moving. So we'll go ahead and reset it again. As you can tell, I have a little bit of a print here to make sure everything's working as well. So let's say they just want to move here, right? Then over the radio, you would hear the results of that going on as you continue to do other things. This would make it so that you're able to juggle a little more. Now, here's the thing. It's unfortunate that we have to consider all these other more complicated, more nuanced factors of the game at this point, but I think we need to know what direction we want to go with this. Because we already know that we want a increasingly stressful situation. This is the definition of insidious, right? It just progressively gets worse and worse and more overwhelmed. We're implementing how their coworkers are leaving, thus increasing your workload, thus increasing the amount of calls that you're getting, right? Where it gets a lot more chaotic, and then eventually the amount of calls that are coming in and the amount of resources that you have are not, or rather the resources, the amount you have are not able to cover all the calls that are coming in, until eventually you just lose, right? You're the last ones left, rather. And that's kind of, I mean, I still very much want to stick with it, but about learning with the accessibility and the vulnerabilities of overwhelm, we have to be very careful. Or we can decide that we are not going to accommodate to that kind of I'm trying to think of a better word than disability. The inability to be able to be in that kind of environment. And it's difficult to say, because if we make it more chaotic and we move towards, like, we have to think about how many calls are we expecting. Are we expecting calls between sending resources to houses? Because if we're expecting calls being sent to different houses, in the first idea where we follow the resource, follow the emergency vehicle, it's like, how would that even look, right? Because the phone is like, okay, so you would follow them. Oh, this one's the only one that's working. You would follow it. Well, it stopped working. Well, whatever. Could I just do main menu? They highlight, but they don't do anything. Well, the main menu needs a little bit of love. You would follow the main menu, or not? You would follow the resource, and then the text of the call would come in, or you would exit the computer and then click on the phone. And then you would read the phone, and you will see it happening in the background. But then when they reach their destination and you're trying to listen to the call, are we going to have overlapping sound? Do we want overlapping sound? I personally don't want overlapping sound, because I know for me personally, that's a real easy way of me just having like sensory overload and then just disassociate, and then I'm just like, I didn't get any of that. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, is to kind of avoid sound overlap, especially dialogue overlap. And when we have radio situation and a call, like, you could have essentially 3 things going on at the same time, which is the radio playing, like what's the results of things happening. You have the phone call going to tell you, to send somebody. And then you could have what's happening on the screen also, like maybe we'll have sound happening there too. So we need to find a way that, the easy solution is to make it so that one cannot happen while the other is happening. In other words, calls can't come in when you're already sending someone out, which would be a weird restriction, right? It would be a weird restriction where it's like, oh, sorry, sir, I'm currently sending someone over. I can't talk to you right now. I'm watching a square move across the screen. And that would be weird. Plus, it would make it very difficult to feel like you're being overwhelmed if you were only given one thing at a time and no more, ever. And there's a difference between the kind of overwhelm that I want to instill with people versus a complete sensory overload where you are essentially physically incapable of understanding what's going on. When you are given too much at the same time sensory wise, your brain just kind of short circuits a little bit. And it's not in a emotional, tense response. I'm not afraid when I have too many sounds happening at the same time. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. I have a headache and I want to leave. It'll make me want to turn the game off. It's not going to make me want to beat it, right? But what I want is a feeling of dread as where things are piling up and you can't get to all of it. So there's a couple of ways that we could potentially go about this, right? So the issue is, let's see here. Boop. Interaction. Problem. The problem is the desire to increase stress without overwhelming senses. That's the problem. So the potential solution to that problem, there's one solution where it's like, make it so that only one at a time can be approached. Decision. No. Difficult to make stressful. So another one might be maybe hold. Because when you think of real life solutions to that problem, because it is, you would essentially have like a line, right? You would have a waiting where it would be like, a operator will get to you in 5 minutes, like that kind of thing, where it's like, you are number 3 on the line, please stay. Like it's things of that nature where it backs up, right? So then you don't have so many things happening at the same time. You can have them make it so they have one thing at a time, maybe, but the but there's that you can approach it when you're ready, right? You decide when you accept the incoming transmission. Player decides when to receive transmission, either, and then I'll do like phone/radio, right? And we could potentially play with that a little bit, right? Because on one hand, we can make it so that the player, if we give that player the ability to receive at their own time, if we don't have consequences, if we don't have restrictions to it, then it would be kind of similar to the first one, except a little bit better, because you get to see things pile up. Because so for instance, let's say, okay, it takes me 10 seconds to make a call, or to take a call, right? And then I'm watching as I'm, answering the phone, sending the appropriate people, blah, blah, blah. I'm not making mistakes. But as I'm going on, I'm seeing that the line of calls that haven't been taken is slowly going up. It's going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, etc. Or, what if we could make it so they could leave a voicemail? And you get to hear what happens. But which would be better? Would it be better to hear the consequences of you not picking up? Or would it be better to go to a line that someone called you in order to try to live, only to find that the line was cut? That there is only silence and a dial tone, and you don't know what happened to them. You don't know what the emergency was. Only that they are gone now. Or is it better to know? To have a period of time where if you are too late picking it up, they're like, "Oh, thank God you picked up," only to hear them get attacked and be killed because you took too long. I think when it comes to playing with this kind of stuff, there is more potential in not knowing. Because, so hear me out here. Because this is the power of utilizing the lack of knowledge is one of my favorite things in horror, and is applicable to a lot of different things in life, especially creativity. When it comes to writing, when it comes to making lore, when it comes to drawing, even when it comes to a lot of different creative aspects, utilization of the absence of information is, and kind of weaponizing that is very effective in my opinion. So in the let's kind of do a logical train of thought here, right? Let's go down the path of, we decide to stick with, you get to hear the consequences of your actions, you monster, you took 15 seconds instead of 10, now they're dead because of you. The player feels guilt, the player feels frustration, the player feels fear. The player could feel a lot of different things. And as far as the creative liberties that we can do, that we can play with, as far as what we can do with that person and what has happened to that person, is fairly limited. It's fairly limited. And it's, the way I like to put it is this way, right? You know that they died. You can play with how they died. You can play with what killed them. You can play with all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, those people are dead. Whoever was on the other line, they were attacked and or killed. And you know that there's a significant possibility that the next time you hear from them are going to be an imposter. You have an answer to a problem. You are given an answer to a problem at the same time. You are given both the problem and the answer at the same time, rather. However, if we look at from the different perspective of, we don't tell the player what happens, they just hang up. Now the player assumes, you give the agency to the player to think and assume one thing or another, right? Where you go, well, they could have been killed. They could have gotten away. I am responsible to not help them when they need me, so the main impact is there, but I haven't been giving any answers, only questions. And we, as the maker of this situation, can decide how we want to go about doing it. How do we want to face this? How do we want them to face this? Do we want the player, do we want this situation to be one of, they get killed and are replaced? Or did they get away? Or did they fight it off? Is the next time that they call the 911 operator, you are no more clear on if it's a real person or not than when they didn't call in the first place. So I am very much the options of what we can play with and what we can introduce to the player as a potential situation is so much more in a not, you don't know versus you have been given clues. So I am going to put over here for decisions. Make when a player or when a person calls and the player is too slow to pick up, And by slow to pick up, I don't mean in the sense of like, oh, you're not good enough. I mean, from environmental situations outside of your control, you did not get to that person in time. So to pick up, the line will be cut off, and the player will not know what happened or condition of the person on the other side. Boom. Done. So we can play on that end, right? But we have two other avenues to explore. We have the other end of the radio, or rather knowing the results of said decision, right? Because I really want that kind of feedback. What I don't want, because the simplest, and something that we can implement relatively, I say relatively easily, like I haven't spent a week trying to put up a main menu. But relatively easily is you send the resources to the location, you made the wrong choice, and then those resources gray out and you no longer can use them anymore. Oops, it was the wrong decision, right? It was a very silent result. It is a very quiet result. And I think one that a lot of people are like, wait, why am I missing resources? Like, it's so quiet, they don't know, right? And because we want to make a game where the player and the people that they send in, the resources, we want an emotional investment. We want the player to not want to lose anybody. And for every person that we lose, it's an impact on that person. Because we want to play on the unique horror, the unique terror and pressure that is being responsible for the lives of others. We want people to really consider this isn't a chessboard where pawns are sacrificed to win the game. There is no winning this game. And I think for some people, once they know you can't win, they won't get attached to anybody because it's like you're just gonna die. But I mean, if I could be completely honest for you, that's real life too. You can't decide that you can't get close to people because they'll eventually die. That is, well, you certainly could. I certainly don't recommend it because that is a very hollow and lonely life. And life is so much more than that. I think what helps make relationships and moments more precious is the knowledge that it is limiting. It is limited. There's only a certain amount of time that we are given here on Earth. And you just have to make the most of it with the people that matter to you. And for the people that matter to you, in order to find them, you have to, find them. So the idea of, people won't get close to these characters because they're gonna die. It's like, well, how's that any different? I guess the main difference, hydration reminder, by the way. I think one of the major differences is that, hopefully, the game is shorter. And that you getting attached to characters, for the most part, you're looking at 30 minutes, maybe, before they die? Versus years, hopefully for y'all. But I certainly don't think we shouldn't try just because it is a temporary thing. I think games and books and media in general have shown time and time again that it doesn't matter how limited the amount of time that you spent with a person or with a personality, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't and won't get attached. Do I want full-fledged novels and character development for every person? I mean, in a perfect world, yeah. In a perfect world, that's 100% what I want to do. I want the characters to be strong. I don't want there to be any faceless people here. Now, am I gonna... I was gonna say trauma dump. Lore dump? In the sense of like, oh, this is Frank. He is here to help get money for the graduation of his daughter. And then it's like, oh, no, I feel bad when he dies. That's like, no, that's... I don't know. That feels like forced sympathy, and I don't like that. I want it to be organic. Which is why, at least for the most part in the beginning, we need to create moments, and enough moments, to allow the connection to grow with the player, right? And what could be interesting, now that I think about it, what could be interesting, because we were talking about replayability, right? And how we want to check off all three key, essentially the Triforce of games. And for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, I am talking about the utilization of making sure that the game is fun to watch, fun to play, and fun to watch other people's play. Those are the trifecta. As far as games nowadays, if you have one that hits all three, I feel like you're gonna be a lot more successful than any combination of the one or two of those. I think having all three allows a much more likely chance of things to kind of feed on itself, be kind of what's the word? It's not the word, but like self-marketing. Where it's more word of mouth, or streamers love it, and then streamers talk to other streamers, and then people on YouTube watch other people watch it, play it, and then they play it, and then they talk about it, and then there's then other people talk about it, and then it just kind of domino effects down, where it's just like, I didn't have to really do much of anything. I didn't have to try to get a commercial on Netflix in order to to sell the game. And to be honest, as far as like marketing goes, part of the reason why I am, making the game in the public eye is because by the time I get done with it, hopefully I've built enough interest in my community that some of y'all will be willing to try it. Because starting off with 3 people buying a game versus 0 people buying the game could mean everything. Because when it comes to domino effects like that, it's exponential. And the growth between 0 and 3 is so much higher. That's granted, I'd be lucky if 3 people buy it, but doesn't mean we're not gonna make the living fuck out of this game. However long it may take. Because to kind of put it a little bit in perspective, if we look at our development roadmap right now, yeah. Yeah. So we are quite considerably behind. If I was to put a new schedule together, I have a sneaking suspicion it's probably going to take us a year. At the rate that we're going, we spend a lot of our time just kind of like figuring things out. And then when we try to get things done, we kind of don't know what we're doing, so then we have to teach ourselves what we're doing, right? Because for instance, if I tried to make a main menu again, I have one that now works that I could just utilize and then kind of adjust here and there. I turned like a 2-week process into a couple hour process, right? But that's just how game development is, you know? Even something small like this isn't really small. Not really in the grand scheme of things. But it's what we decided on. It's the thing that we wanted to move forward with, right? Anyway, I don't even remember what I was talking about. A player decides when to receive transmissions. We were talking about the radio, incoming radio, and how we want there to be proper feedback as far as the decision, because we want people to care. And if we want people to care, the last thing we want to do is undersell the removal of said character from your game. Oh, I remember what it was. We were talking about as part of the replayability of this game, I think the likelihood of people kind of falling in love with a character, I think it's much less likely they'll fall in love with every single character. I think it would be beneficial that we don't try to do that either, because if we try to do that, like when I was saying like, oh, I'm not going to lore dump, it's like, what, we need to give the players enough time to get used to the characters and then fall in love with the character. Well, not fall in love, but like get attached to them. And that is a very slow start for a game that you want to be playing again and again and again. It's like, bro, I didn't care about this person the first time I played it. I'm not going to care about this person the 5th time I played it, right? It feels very forced if you put that all in the beginning. So you have a unique situation where we want to create playability as well as character development, but they kind of clash a bit, because it's going to be more of the same, unless we want different starts to have different parts of the character. But I think learning that a character you didn't like spaghetti and meatballs isn't going to change your opinion on that he's being a bit of a douche. So, this is what I'm thinking. I am thinking that with the progression, as the game progresses forward, people will have certain characters, specific characters, that they fall in love with. We don't want them to fall in love with every character, but just like 3. And I think people in general are more inclined, usually, to have like they don't get along with everybody. But they do get along with some people. They do kind of really get attached to some people, specific people. And kind of examples of this I like to think is like when people play Stardew Valley. I think there are some people out there who want to like romanticize everybody or want to get on everyone's good side. But I think most people are like, no, there is one person who I fall in love with and I want them to be my partner. Right? It's kind of like that. Am I going to have romance in this? No. That's going to be our eggs in too many baskets. Like, it's going to take away a lot. But that doesn't mean we don't want people to love certain characters or not. Because then they may play it a little differently. They'll send other resources to different locations that they would normally not care about. Like, oh, I know that the character that I love is in Cop Car 3. So I'm not going to send Cop Car 3 if I'm not sure that it's an okay situation. Right? And what we could do is make it so that the progression of a character and the development of that character is I wouldn't say finished, but it is accomplished throughout the game, even after when shit hits the fan. So the ones, because like there's always going to be a last person alive besides you, right? There will be a police officer who was alive, a fireman who was alive, a EMT that is alive. Like, there will be one person who is alive till the very end. And unless you're purposely trying to make sure that that's the last person, I imagine, or at least I theorize, that the person at the end is going to be different almost every time. And I think what we could do is that every player or every character in the game, as far as resources goes, and to a lesser degree the people who live in the houses, right? They have a character arc from beginning to end. And you see it progress as time moves on. You see how they approach these things, how they react to when they come across these creatures, how they react when all their coworkers and friends and people that they care about are dying. And how do they accept that they are the last one? Right? I think that is the best way to have a player fall in love with a character, is to see them come into this situation and see them grow as a person until the very end. And then when you start over again, you're going to see that person as in that resource, not as a resource anymore. They're a person. And then now you're more hesitant to send them out. And then you play the game again and you make a mistake or something, and it's just as devastating the second time, and then a new person gets through to the very end. And you see how they grow. And then the player realizes, oh, every one of these characters has a story, a growth, a moment. And I think people would want to see how they all grow and how they all interact and how they do, because it's learning about a person. And I think that's so human. The desire to want to know about a person, you know? So, it's not accessibility. I want to write it down. Player is too slow to pick up. We'll put this in here for now. We'll arrange all of our kind of decisions and thoughts in a better way in the future. But as of right now, I kind of just want to write it down and then move forward. Have the development of a character be throughout the progress of the game, and the farther the character goes without dying, the more the player learns and becomes attached. Will, unless purposely manipulated, will often be a different person every time. And I put that last part in there because when it comes to different people, this is where we can go down a rabbit hole, right? Where it's like, oh, what if the different characters had stats and certain people were good at certain things, where you have certain people are really good at investigation and some people are really good at fighting, and then you give all the resources where all the resources have different stats and efficiencies and blah 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 and weaknesses. And I'm like, that's that's too far. We have now lost the narrative, right? It's like we could go down that, but now it's a horror strategy RPG. Right? It's like, no, we just because we want a strong narrative does not mean that we want to make this an RPG. And just because well, that would be double dipping what I just said, so never mind. But yeah, we will do that. So as far as receiving a two-way radio, though, we can't just put the two-way radio on hold. So there's two things that we could do about this. We can make it so that the priority goes to the radio versus the phone. I think if we take that outside of the control of the player, that could be really frustrating. Because it's like, I sent these, especially when you're sending out a lot of people, then we all have to really make sure that they don't, it's like, even if they arrived, they're not radioing in because you're currently listening to a different radio. It's like, then we have to be really mindful as far as how long, like, the things stayed on the radio, and it's a whole thing. So I think it's a live radio with recording technology. Essentially, the radio is second. It's almost like it could be a voicemail, where it's like, now you have a radio with one message pending, where you have a recording of what happened. So when you have a moment, you listen to that recording. Right? Now, I guess the question is, does it auto go? Like, that's the thing too, where it's like, it's not like where there's a system of people in line where it just auto updates, where it's just like, you have 2 calls waiting, you have 3 calls waiting, you have 4 calls waiting. In the radio one, I think you would just go through if you're not busy. So then I'm just trying to think, because let's say let's say nothing's going on, and then they reach and you get to the radio. I think it would be really annoying if I would then have to go away from the screen and then turn on the radio and be like, or like see that it's been pending, and then I start it, and then it's like, is it live? Is it not live? You know? Do we have situations where, okay, I haven't listened to the message yet, but I see that the like EMTs and fire trucks have left the location, so they obviously didn't die, right? Or do they sit there and wait until you've confirmed? Right? Or if you hadn't gotten to it in like 10 minutes and they haven't moved, do you just assume that they died and you're like, I'm not listening to that, that's a bad time? I don't know, man. I don't know. Reminder to stay hydrated. How do we want to do the radio? All right, thought. What if we hear the radio, them talking on the radio, but it's not comprehensible, right? So you know how the classic where it's just like like that, where you would have like non-comprehensible radio talk, right? And then like if you want to listen to it, then you click the radio and then you would be able to hear it. Would it start over from scratch, or would it start from that moment? I'm trying to think what the 911 operator games did, but I'm pretty sure they just had like a loading bar. Like it was very much just like not a conversation that you were listening to. But I want this to be something that you listen to, because it's more real. It feels more real. Because the radio, the police arriving, the EMTs arriving, the firemen arriving, that's the answer. This is a strategy horror game. You have been given a riddle of, is this true or not true? And you looked at the signs, and you looked at what it could be, what it could not be, and made an ultimate decision of sending the appropriate response, your answer to the riddle. So there should be effort in the answer, regardless if that answer is a pleasant one. Because it's not quite like the calls, right? Where if you put in an order, and then if you you don't get to actively see things going on from the results of your actions. It's much more, at least on the people calling. When the phone calls kind of thing, you can have the thing happen and nothing on the map changes. Right? You actively choose what you think is spreading and how it's spreading, right? You flag certain things, or you make the notes. How we're going to go about it, I'm still not 100% on, but for the most part, you have control over how it's visually represented to you. I was thinking as far as should I make it free draw? There'd be a penis on that map before there would be no. I wonder if there's a way to make it. Maybe I should say something like no penises. In the tutorial, it's here, you're free to draw on the map. Just remember, this map could be seen by everyone, so no phallic imagery. That'd be kind of funny. Well, we haven't decided how we're going to go about that, but we know that we're going to give the player agency. Ugh, maybe I need to give myself some orange juice. My god, man. My brain is... Ugh. You know what, at the very least, let's not flashbang, y'all. We'll just leave it on this one for now. So if we're gonna have them receive radio. Maybe I need to think about... It's not quite fitting. I like the transmissions through the phone in a line where you would have to approach them, but if you wait for too long, then it kind of happens outside your control, right? But the radio, it doesn't quite fit as well. I wonder if we need to think of it a little more outside the box when it comes to the radio. Okay, let's think of, let's look at again at what we want. We want the player to know the results of what happened. We want the player to know the results of what happened. The issue lies with having it be mostly a auditory experience clashing with other mandatorily audio experiences. So we decided, well, we can give the player the ability to kind of turn that on or off, or to approach it when they are ready so they do not get overwhelmed. We are going to have potential consequences when it comes to the phone, but and people coming in from the houses, but when it comes to the resources, they don't play by the same rules. You get to see them move. You get to see them respond. Maybe I'm thinking it too strict as far as audio versus video. So let's explore the idea that instead of a two-way radio, or maybe in addition to the two-way radio, but instead of listening in the two-way radio, instead just the incomprehensible noises, and that's it. And then you, the player, get to watch the resources go in and speak visually. So basically, it's almost like a speech bubble, where you get to read. You get to read what they're saying. And then you see what happens visually. And then you could just take calls while that's happening. But then we run into the issue of, well, what if multiple things are happening at the same time? Do you just flip back and forth? Is it the most recent one? Do we have do we group them into like a group where it's just like, cool, you sent 2 policemen, an EMT, and a fire truck. This is group 1. And then you go over there, and then you can click group 1 to look at group 1 and see what they are doing and how things are moving forward. And the same is for group 2 and group 3 and group 4 and blah, 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 right? We could. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know. Hi. I am very tired. Let's see. My brain is mush. Well, I wouldn't say fully mush, but it's very much not. As soon as we hit this, I was like, okay, well, let's think it through. And then an hour of trying to think this through, I'm like, my brain has run out of energy. What the hell? I had lunch and everything. Well, it's still in recovery, so with I don't even know what. I will say, I did test twice, and it wasn't COVID either time. But from what I hear, those older tests aren't they aren't good at being positive for the new strains. So it could have been the new strain. So it could have been that. Let me grab some orange juice. Maybe a little bit of vitamin C and a little bit of sugar will kind of upstart my brain. One sec. Got me a glass of OJ. The juice, not the man. Maybe we step away for a little bit. And maybe come back? Maybe? I did hear about Helldivers 2. But I haven't touched Helldivers 2 since the whole Sony thing. We have Pacific Drive, but I don't know if I got the bandwidth for it. Maybe Potion Craft. I'm thinking maybe Potion Craft. Yeah, let's do that. We'll take a little bit of a break. We'll step away from the complicated interactions of human beings and players and AIs and radios and all that other kind of stuff. We'll step into our lab real quick. And if I feel better after drinking some OJ, we can hop right back to it. All right. Hello. There you go. Updated the stream.